Welcome to this edition of Spirit at Work. Today, the regular co-host, Larry Villeman, is not here. He's off on other duties, but I get the honor to be here with Denny Buzzelli, somebody I've known for a number of years, going back to high school, a product of Akron Public Schools and the University of Akron. And currently, Denny is an educational consultant. Welcome here.
Thank you. Thanks, Thor. Good.
You know, I know a lot about your background, but the folks out there don't. What kind of led you especially eventually into the teaching field?
Well, I think like most people, probably teachers that I had. I know that my experience as a student, I thoroughly enjoyed, and I think when we went to North, that was a great experience for me. I loved the teachers I had. They were people that I looked up to. The coaches that I had were people that I truly admired and really still impact my life. There was one teacher that I had that I felt like really made a difference for me. And I think because of him, I think I was probably one of the main reasons that I chose to go into education. And that's always been very clear to me that that was what I wanted to do. I don't think I ever really hesitated and feel like I've been fortunate to be able to do something that really meant a lot to me, but I also felt like I was able to make a difference.
Yeah. You mentioned this one teacher and even others that you admired, you looked up to. What were the attributes they had that you admired?
Well, I think the one thing that struck me was their sort of passion for what they did. You know, the one teacher I had was an English teacher, and that's what I taught. But it was just his love of literature and theater and that was almost contagious, and was something that really kind of made me feel like that's what I want, and that's really the kind of experience that I want to have with my life. And I think that probably as much as I think. And I think the other thing was they were people that I deeply respected. I mean, not just as teachers, but as individuals, and had a sense from them that they really cared about me. So, yeah.
Would you say in some way you could see for yourself and for others that teaching was a calling?
Yeah, I no question. I mean, I think it is something that, as long as I've been in it now, I begin to see that there is this sense of those that are really, truly in it as a calling are incredible, you know, and make a difference in the lives of children and that. And I do think, yeah, it is a calling, no question.
Yeah. Now, I know you've been a teacher, you've been an administrator, consultant. Going back to your teaching experience, what did you most treasure about being a teacher in the classroom?
Well, I think the thing that the connection with students, you know, it's kind of funny that I was a teacher and then I was a principal, and in both of those roles I had a chance to be with the students on a daily basis. I made a decision at a point in my career where I was going to go into the central office, and that was going to be the shift. And thought, boy, that'll be nice. It'll be quiet, and I won't have to deal with, you know, and especially in a principal's role, a lot of the times the sort of negative aspects of that. But one of the things I realized in that first year was how much the students gave to you, how much that was such an important part of. And it took me quite a while to adjust to the fact that that was no longer in my life the way it was you know, when I was teaching or when I was a principal.
Yeah. What was it about the students they gave to you that you were missing?
Well, I think it was the nature of the relationship that I think I always felt like one thing that was that if you respect them, they will in turn give it back to you. And having that type of relationship where you could actually enjoy them and have fun with them, and at the same time have expectations in terms of what you expect, how you expected them to perform.
Yeah. Can you think, and I'm sure you have many of these examples, of an example that, gosh, with somebody, with a student or a teacher that just stands out for you when you look back and say, wow, that was a moment where a real difference was made?
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've been in the classroom, but this is there are a couple of times, several times, and I think it never ceases to amaze me when later in years, and a lot of times I'll run into former students, or I'll hear of somebody who said so and so was a student of yours. And what always kind of strikes me was not realizing the kind of impact that you had on them. When they say to you, you really made a difference in my life, and if it was because of what you said or because of what you did when you said this, that it really changed some things for me. And not even realizing when you're kind of in that daily experience that you do make those kind of differences.
Yeah. Education is under such scrutiny today, and so many conversations and debates. What do you think the general public needs to understand about the role of a teacher in the classroom?
Well, I think there probably hasn't been a time where it is more challenging, and for two reasons. One, the world has changed dramatically and is continuing to change. And it creates a whole set of expectations that we didn't have 30 years ago or 40 years ago. There was a time when we could have, for example, a dropout rate of 40%, and that was okay, because there was some place for those kids to go. They could get jobs and earn decent livings not having a high school diploma. Today's world is very different, where kids have not only to have a high school diploma, but need to have the kind of 21st century skills to be able to perform out there and to be able to be successful, to have a job that's going to allow them to live a healthy, productive life and to be self-supporting. That's a huge shift. And our expectations have to increase dramatically for kids to get them to those levels. And this has to be for all kids. There was a time when we educated some kids to very high levels, but then there were a lot of other kids that we didn't have to educate to those levels. That's no longer the case. And that's the challenge for teachers today.
As people look at education, there's so many folks out there that are pontificating about this or that. What do you see as a particular focus? Like, for example, if somebody is a new teacher and says, hey, I want to tap into your wisdom, what can you tell me that I need to know as I start off?
Well, first of all, there's not a lot of wisdom there. but what is there? One of the things I think is that we need to be sort of the focus on how to engage students. And by engaging, meaning we have to kind of create work that gets students to really want to perform that work and to do that work. How do we get them into work that will cause them to learn what we want them to learn? And that's what I mean by engaging them. And I know for all of us, we've had those experiences a lot of times when we get into work and it's so engaging and we're really into it. And you lose time, you lose your sense of time, and you're just totally into it. And you persevere through tough stuff just because you're really into it. We need to kind of create those kinds of experiences on a regular basis for students to cause them to really learn at high levels. And as long as we are in sort of what I call the compliance game, where our job is to try to make kids compliant, and we try to control them heavily and think that that's going to cause them to learn at high levels, it doesn't work.
Yeah. And I know you've been involved with folks now at this time in your life with professional development of teachers and of administrators. Maybe going along with what you've just said, what would you say, gosh, here's some focus I see as real important with teachers and administrators, and is it different for the two, how you develop a teacher, how you develop an administrator?
Well, I think, first of all, we've got to develop this sense of, for a long time, teaching was a pretty isolated profession. And I think it starts with the whole history of how the classrooms and how schools got started, where there were those one-room schoolhouses, and teachers were very independent and taught on their own. And over the years, what we've done is we've kind of put lots of teachers together in schools, but they still operate as individual entrepreneurs. They pretty much do their own thing. One of the things that I think we have to learn very much in education, and one of the areas we're trying to really improve in, is how to get teachers to really work together and to think through how we cause kids to learn together, okay, and doing a lot more collaborative types of experiences for them, where they begin to look at the work they design for kids and do it together, and beginning to get a much clearer common understanding of what good practice looks like. We need to be able to create those experiences for teachers also. We need to model some of the practices that go on in other professions. One very simple one is the whole notion of how do we begin to learn through our practice and get better at our practice through learning about it in terms of actually looking at the practice of teaching together.
Yeah, some of that emphasis on what are the best practices out there, what can we pick up from them.
Yeah.
Well, Denny, it's great to have you here. We're going to close this segment and in a moment come back again to hear from Denny Buzzelli as we talk more about a very important area in our country and our world today, education. Welcome back to this segment of Spirit at Work. We're here today, or I guess I'm here today, with Denny Buzzelli, who's also a high school friend, and it's great to be able to interview you. And Denny is currently an educational consultant for many years. Do you want me to say many years? Been in the educational field.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were talking about the importance of teachers collaborating, working together. And I know you were principal and then you were an administrator, even beyond being a principal. But what would you say, like administrators, how was that for you? And what kind of influence should they be having on teachers? And do they even have time to do the kind of things? Because I always hear from some administrators, they're busy trying to raise money and levies and do a lot of things that doesn't give them enough time.
I think probably for me in education, one of the most fulfilling jobs that I did, and and probably the most difficult and the most challenging for me, was being a superintendent of a school district. And it was, and one of the things that it really challenged me was the sense of wanting to do it in a way in which I really wanted to kind of tap into the collective wisdom of the whole staff.
Yes.
And begin to figure out, and we created this concept of what we called shared leadership. And for me, it was this sense of really trying to get people, and I really do believe that you lead people to one of two ways, either through control and power or through creating aspiring conditions. And I think people can be, and depending on how you feel about and really believe with, I think some deep beliefs, the fundamental nature of man, really drives what you choose, which direction you choose to go. I guess my sense always is that man inherently wants to do well. And all we have to do is create the aspiring conditions that allow them to do well. And so it was my job as a leader to try to help create a sense of aspiration by helping to create a picture of what could be, and beginning to help them to get what I thought and what we could, and beginning to kind of impact that sense of what could be by conversations with them. And we really started to create an environment where groups of teachers were really interested and involved in trying to impact and make a difference in their school and in their classroom. And it was, and giving them the power to be able to do that, and then supporting them in the work they needed to do to actually allow them to really work on making some things, some conditions better for both them and for their students.
Is that continuing on today? I mean, again, all these concerns people have around various districts and what's going on. Is that still a good focus, or are people getting so caught up in so many other things that that sometimes gets lost sight of?
It's a real challenge, and there is a pull, and there's no question. And And I think, especially for people that are in leader positions, like principals and superintendents, as you said, a lot of times they're pulled. And I look at kind of the work of principals and superintendents as the work of being both a manager and a leader. And you have to manage the organization that you're a part of. There's no question about that. But when that becomes the dominant role and the only role you do, then you're missing out on a huge part of what I look at as your really important work, and that's the work of leading others, and how do you effectively lead. And that's the real challenge, is to help people to begin to do that. And I don't think anybody could lead without a strong sense of really understanding what their beliefs are and how their beliefs drive what they do and how they do it.
Yeah. What else would you say? In so many organizations, there's that differentiation between manager and leader. What's specific about the leader so that the leader doesn't just keep managing, but realizes, no, this is another set of skills or another way to come at things?
Yeah. I think two things. I think one, I think you have to really help them to begin to see and to realize the importance of this kind of work. Especially today, I think what we point to in schools today is that schools need to improve. Schools need to change. To get that to happen, that's the work of a leader. Managers cause things to continue.
Okay.
And to continue effectively. In other words, I can keep doing the work we've done, and we will do it, effectively. What we're hearing today, and I believe it's true, is we need to look at changing some of the work that we do. In order to get those kinds of changes, you've got to have your people that are in those roles serve as a leader.
Yeah. I've heard it said, put succinctly, that a manager is busy about doing things right, and a leader is about focusing on what are the right things to do.
Yeah, and I do think that's a big part of the leader's work. And in my mind, the leader isn't the solution person. They're not the shall I answer man.
Yes.
I'm kind of dating myself there,
yes.
when I use that. Yeah. Okay, but really, for me, the leader is about raising the right questions, okay? And beginning to kind of look at and helping to frame the problems right. Because if we don't get those, and if we aren't asking the right questions, we never get to the right solutions.
What are a couple of the right questions that educators, and I know you're also a consultant now, need to be raising to ask the folks?
Well, I think, the one is, and any of the work that we do, and any of the work, and one of the things that I said about schools a lot of times is they're pulled in a lot of different directions. And they're doing lots of work, and they're working very hard at a lot of things. My question always is, how is that going to result in actually better learning for your students? If you can't take this back to this creating a better learning experience for your students, then we maybe shouldn't be doing this work over here. You have to be able to make at least a dotted line connection to this impact, that's the ultimate place that it has to get hit and impact.
So many organizations today, there's such a fast pace of change. Do you find now, as a consultant working with a number of folks, is there some resistance to change? Is there, and if there is, let's say, how do we encourage people to not be so resistant?
I think there is some degree of resistance to change, because we all have a fear of change, first of all. I mean, one of the things that we usually seek out is comfort, and comfort usually looks like status quo, keeping things the same. And even in our own lives, we like to kind of have patterns, and we like to keep things pretty much the same, and we seek that out. So it goes against sometimes just that sort of normal, natural tendency, first of all. So it has to be something pretty challenging and pretty compelling. Also, it has to be something that people see value in. And that's, sometimes people can't make that connection there and see, so where is the real value in this kind of work that you're asking me to do? So we have to make sure that we are able to make that kind of connection, help people make that kind of connection. The other thing is that a lot of times, and I hear this a lot, especially with experienced educators, been there, done that, okay? This is the next thing down the road, okay? We've done this, we've done that, we've done all kinds of things. Okay, this is just another one of those things and that will come and go and that. So, and I think the real challenge in education today is to get real focused, okay? That we can't be doing and asking schools and teachers to do lots of different things. We've got to help them get real focused on what's really critical for us to do, given the students we've got and given the conditions that we've got here. What should be our focus? That really becomes critical.
I know you made a transition, a change, if you will, a while back, moving into being more of an educational consultant rather than a full-time position as a superintendent or administrator. How has that been for you, and how have you experienced that transition?
Well, at this point in my life, you know, it's that time when, for a lot of us baby boomers, it's that time when you start to think about retirement. And I always thought that, you know, that traditional sort of version of retirement was not for me. That idea that you work for up till your 60th or your 65th, you know, year, and then suddenly you retire and you're done, and then you go off and do fun things and that. For me, it was always this sense of, I think I'd like to have a balance in my life of being able to do things that I like to do and have fun doing, but also the kind of work that I enjoy doing also, and the kind of work that gives me satisfaction and gives me a sense of purpose. And so really, this is my opportunity to kind of have a blend of both of those. And it's been a nice sort of shift for me in there. And I think as I get older, one of the things I realize is even though there's still energy there, I don't think I have the energy level that I once had. You know, I notice a difference in lots of areas that it's just like, it's just not there the way it used to be.
We're going to wrap up here in a moment. If you could briefly just say your spirituality, how do you see that underlying everything you were just talking about?
I knew you were going to ask that.
Priest, got to.
Spirituality in this. I think for me, you know, it's this sense of, this really sense of creating, and I guess I look at God and I look at love, and I think that we're here to kind of be able to kind of create conditions where we have the opportunity to love and care for each other. And that in the work that I do, I'd like to feel that that's part of what I'm trying to do, is to create those kinds of conditions for myself and for others.
Denny, thanks. Thanks for being here and gosh, sharing with us. I think what you're saying about educators, any of us in whatever work we do, there's a lot to reflect on here. Be back for a closing segment in a moment. Welcome back to this closing segment of Spirit at Work. Those of you who've watched our program know that usually I have a conversation briefly with Larry Villeman, an attorney, about our reflections on the guest today. Today, I guess I'm talking to myself and hopefully to you too, just with a few reflections. You know, we had Denny Buzzelli, who's an educator, and just listening to him reminded me that in some way, all of us, no matter what our position in life, whatever our work, whether we're a student at home, or retired, we're all educators of a sort. That we need to, and we're all learners of a sort too, to be able to see that each and every day we come at life from what do I have to learn today? And what do I have to pass on today to others? Very struck how Denny now has taken those positions from being a teacher to being a principal to try to resource teachers, to being a superintendent to resource the principals, and now in consultant work, still wanting to make a difference, still wanting to do something significant. Again, I'm very struck. I've known Denny through the years with that sense of purpose and passion that he has, and that all of us could have that every day of our lives in some way, saying, how can I make a difference today? What can I learn? What can I teach? Maybe that's an opportunity for all of us to even think about that right now as we conclude this reflection from just watching this. What did you learn? What can you pass on? Look forward to seeing you at the next segment.